Have you ever wondered why the most profound wisdom often comes from silence? Why some of the greatest minds in history, like Buddha, chose silence over words? Could it be that silence holds secrets we have yet to uncover? Welcome to OM Wisdom, where we explore timeless truths and life-changing lessons to bring clarity and peace to your journey. In today's story, we unravel the transformative power of silence and how it can lead to a life of profound inner peace. Imagine this. Words are often described as weapons sharper than swords. They can heal, but they can also destroy. Yet what if I told you that silence, the very absence of words, has the potential to be the most powerful force in our lives? This idea might sound paradoxical, even shocking, but it's true. Silence, when embraced, can illuminate truths we've been blind to and unlock doors to a deeper understanding of ourselves. In this episode, we'll share the story of a restless king, a wise monk, and an experiment that transformed a life. By the end, you'll discover why speaking less can lead to living more, and how you too can harness the power of silence for your own journey. Let's dive in. In a distant past, there was a king whose life seemed to be the very embodiment of success. His palace was a marvel of architecture, filled with treasures from every corner of the world. His lands stretched farther than the eye could see, and his people revered him as a ruler of wisdom and strength. From the outside, his life appeared perfect, the kind of life others could only dream of. Yet, deep within, the king carried a burden that no one else could see, a persistent and unrelenting restlessness. Despite his immense wealth, power, and influence, the king felt a profound emptiness in his heart. The grandeur of feasts, the thrill of conquests, and the praise of his subjects all failed to fill the void within him. Nights were the hardest. As the palace grew silent, his thoughts became loud. Questions plagued him. Why am I unhappy? Why can I not find peace when I have everything? One day, after another sleepless night, the king heard of a renowned monk who lived in a remote and tranquil forest. The monk was said to possess extraordinary wisdom, capable of bringing clarity and peace to even the most troubled minds. Intrigued and desperate for answers, the king decided to leave his palace behind and seek the monk's guidance. After a long journey through dense forests and winding paths, the king finally reached the monk's humble dwelling. The air was thick with tranquility, and the surroundings seemed to hum with an energy that was unfamiliar yet comforting. The monk, dressed in simple robes, greeted the king with a gentle smile that seemed to hold the weight of ages. The king bowed respectfully and said, "Respected monk, I have come seeking your wisdom. I possess everything, wealth, power, and the admiration of my people, yet I find no peace. My mind is constantly restless, and no matter what I do, I cannot quiet it. Please, help me find a way to calm this storm within me." The monk listened patiently, his calm demeanor unmoved by the king's desperation. After a moment of silence, he said, "Your restlessness is not unusual. Many who live amidst luxury and constant activity find themselves lost in the noise of the world. But the peace you seek is not something that can be bought, conquered, or gifted. It resides within you, though you have never paused to discover it. Would you be willing to follow my guidance and try an experiment to uncover it?" Desperate for relief, the king replied, "I am willing to do anything to find peace. Tell me what I must do." The monk nodded and explained, "For the next 15 days, you must stay here at my monastery. You will live simply, eat modest meals, and sleep as an ordinary person. Most importantly, you must remain completely silent. Speak only if absolutely necessary. Through this practice, you will begin to see the true nature of your mind." At first, the king was taken aback. Silence? How could silence solve the deep turmoil within him? But the monk's serene confidence was unshakable, and the king decided to trust him. "I will do as you say," he agreed, though he couldn't help but feel skeptical. The journey into silence. The first day of the experiment was nothing short of excruciating. The king's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, questions, and frustrations. Used to the constant activity of palace life, the stillness of the monastery felt suffocating. He wanted to talk, to ask questions, to break the silence that seemed to mock his restlessness. But he remembered the monk's words and forced himself to endure. By the second day, something began to change. As he sat in the garden of the monastery, he noticed the delicate beauty of the flowers swaying gently in the breeze. He heard the soothing chirping of birds and the soft rustle of leaves. These were sights and sounds he had never truly paid attention to before. The world around him seemed alive in a way he had never noticed. By the 5th day, the king found himself drawn into the rhythm of nature. He watched the sun rise and set with a sense of wonder. The simplicity of life at the monastery, far from the noise and chaos of his palace, began to bring a strange kind of joy. On the 10th day, the king experienced something profound. As he sat in stillness, his once turbulent mind began to quiet. Thoughts that had previously raced uncontrollably now seemed to pass by like clouds in the sky. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of clarity and calm. By the 12th day, the king entered a deep state of meditation. He felt as though a great weight had been lifted from his soul. His mind, once consumed by restlessness, was now like a tranquil lake, undisturbed and serene. When the 15 days were over, the king approached the monk with a newfound peace in his eyes. "Respected monk," he said, "I have discovered the cause of my unhappiness. I have spent my life lost in unnecessary talk and negative thoughts. I was so consumed by outward distractions that I never took the time to look within. But through silence, I have found the peace I was seeking." The monk smiled and said, "You have learned a great truth. Silence is not merely the absence of words, it is the presence of awareness. It allows us to see ourselves clearly, free from the noise of the world. Remember this lesson, for it will serve you well." The king's story is a reflection of our own lives. In the modern world, filled with constant noise and endless distractions, we often forget the value of silence. Yet as the king discovered, it is in the quiet moments that we truly find ourselves. Silence is not a sign of weakness. It is a source of immense strength. It allows us to connect with our inner selves, rediscover clarity, and regain control over our thoughts. Whether you are a king or an ordinary person, the lesson remains the same. Peace begins within. This ancient wisdom invites us all to take a step back, embrace silence, and reconnect with the stillness that resides within each of us. Only then can we find the calm we so often seek in the chaos of the world. The unfolding of silence. As the king stepped into the quiet days of his experiment, he found the first few moments excruciating. His thoughts raced, his restlessness grew, and the absence of sound felt unbearable. But as the hours turned into days, something unexpected began to happen. His resistance started to fade. By the 4th day, the king noticed that the overwhelming noise in his mind was no longer as persistent. His thoughts no longer came in relentless waves, but began to pass by like clouds drifting across a clear sky. This newfound stillness puzzled him. How could silence, something so simple, calm the chaos within me? As the days continued, the king began to feel a deep connection with the world around him. One morning, while sitting under a tree, he observed a line of ants carrying food back to their nest. Their determination and teamwork fascinated him. For the first time, he saw the beauty in their small, seemingly insignificant lives. This experience brought a realization. I have spent my life overlooking the simplest and most profound things around me. By the 7th day, his perspective had shifted entirely. He began to see the monastery not as a place of deprivation, but as a sanctuary where life unfolded with grace and purpose. He noticed the monks tending to their daily tasks with a quiet joy that seemed almost otherworldly. Their silence was not a burden, but a source of strength. On the 9th day, the king found himself entering an unexpected state of calm. His thoughts slowed, and he began to reflect on his life as a ruler. He realized how much of his energy he had wasted on trivial matters, arguments with advisors, petty disputes in court, and the endless need to assert his authority. Silence allowed him to see these distractions for what they truly were, unnecessary burdens. By the 12th day, he experienced his first deep meditation. Sitting quietly in the monastery garden, he felt an overwhelming sense of connection, not just with nature but with himself. For the first time, he confronted the source of his restlessness, his own inability to let go of control. Memories of palace life flooded back. He remembered how he would often speak without thinking, letting anger or impatience dictate his words. He saw how his constant need to assert dominance had created distance between him and those he cared about. In the stillness, he realized that silence was not just the absence of words, it was the presence of understanding. By the 15th day, the king was no longer the same man who had arrived at the monastery. His face, once tense with worry, now radiated a serene calm. He approached the monk with a newfound clarity in his eyes. "Respected monk," he said, "these days of silence have been the most transformative experience of my life. I now see that my restlessness was not caused by the world around me, but by my own mind. I was too consumed by speaking, thinking, and controlling, without ever pausing to listen, to others, to nature, and to myself." The monk nodded with a gentle smile. "What you have learned is the essence of silence. It is not just a practice, it is a way of being. In silence, we see the truth of our lives. In silence, we discover who we truly are." The king's journey is one that resonates with all of us. In a world filled with endless noise and distractions, we often forget the value of stillness. Yet as the king discovered, silence is not a void, it is a doorway to clarity, understanding, and peace. Through silence, the king uncovered the strength to face his restlessness, the wisdom to let go of unnecessary burdens, and the courage to embrace the simplicity of life. His story is a reminder that peace begins not in the world around us, but in the quiet depths of our own hearts. Let us too find moments to pause, reflect, and listen to the silence within. For in that silence lies the key to a life of true fulfillment. The wisdom of silence. As the king sat with the monk on the final day of his retreat, the sun was setting behind the forest, casting golden hues over the trees. The quiet of the monastery no longer felt foreign or overwhelming to him. It had become a sanctuary where his restless thoughts had finally been tamed. The king turned to the monk, his voice calm and deliberate. "Respected monk, I now understand the power of silence, but I feel there is still more to learn. What makes silence so transformative?" The monk smiled gently, his eyes filled with the wisdom of countless years. "Silence," he said, "is more than the absence of words. It is the presence of clarity. When you stop speaking, you begin to listen, not just to the world around you, but to the world within. And in that stillness, you find the answers you have been searching for." The king reflected on his experience. He realized that silence had acted as a mirror, showing him truths about himself that he had long ignored. He spoke slowly. "In the palace, I was always surrounded by voices, advisors, ministers, even my own thoughts. There was no room for stillness. But here, in the quiet of the forest, I saw myself clearly for the first time." The monk nodded and shared an ancient teaching. The great Gautama Buddha once said, "In silence, the soul speaks." When you fill your days with noise, you drown out the voice of your true self. But when you embrace silence, you allow your soul to guide you. This guidance is what brings peace. The king thought about the moments of revelation he had experienced during his retreat. On the 7th day, when he had observed the ants working tirelessly, he had realized how much time he wasted on trivial matters. On the 12th day, in deep meditation, he had seen how his own words often created conflict, both within himself and with others. "Why do we speak so much?" the king asked. "Why do we feel the need to fill every moment with words?" The monk replied, "It is because we fear the silence. We fear what it might reveal about us. But the irony is that in avoiding silence, we create more turmoil. Those who embrace it find that silence is not empty, it is full of wisdom. It shows you your weaknesses, but it also reveals your strengths." The monk began to tell the king a story of a disciple who had once asked Buddha why he often chose to remain silent during debates. Buddha's answer was profound. "Silence is a shield. It protects us from unnecessary conflict and gives us the power to observe rather than react." The king listened intently, remembering the countless arguments he had engaged in at court. How often had he spoken out of impatience or anger, only to regret his words later? He realized that much of the unrest in his life had been self-inflicted, a result of speaking without thought. The monk continued, "When you speak less, your words carry more weight. They are no longer lost in a sea of chatter, but become meaningful and impactful. Great leaders throughout history have known this. They chose their words carefully, and in doing so, they inspired trust and respect." The king recalled a neighboring ruler known for his wisdom and restraint. That ruler rarely spoke during meetings, but when he did, everyone listened. His words were deliberate and profound, a stark contrast to the king's own habit of speaking impulsively. The king then asked, "But what about my duties as a ruler? Surely I cannot remain silent all the time." The monk replied, "Silence is not about never speaking. It is about knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet. It is about understanding that your words should serve a purpose, not simply fill the void." The monk pointed to a serene pond nearby. "Look at this water. It is calm because it is undisturbed. But if you throw a stone into it, the ripples will spread, distorting its surface. Your words are like those stones. They can disturb the peace of your mind and the minds of others. Use them wisely, and the water will remain clear." The king closed his eyes and imagined the stillness of the pond. He vowed to carry this lesson into his life, to use his words with intention and purpose. As the retreat came to an end, the monk left the king with one final teaching. True silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the presence of understanding. It is a space where the soul can breathe and the mind can rest. When you return to your palace, do not leave this silence behind. Carry it with you and let it guide your thoughts, your words, and your actions. The king bowed deeply, his heart filled with gratitude. "You have shown me the path to peace," he said. "I now see that silence is not a burden but a gift. It is the key to understanding myself and leading my people with wisdom." As the king journeyed back to his kingdom, he noticed the world around him with new eyes. The chatter of his court no longer overwhelmed him, for he carried the silence of the forest within. He spoke less, listened more, and found that his words, though fewer, held greater power. Through silence, the king had discovered not only peace, but also the strength to lead with clarity and compassion. And so his life became a reflection of the wisdom he had learned, that silence is not the absence of sound, but the beginning of understanding. Embrace silence, embrace yourself. As the king returned to his palace, he carried with him a treasure far more valuable than gold or jewels, the wisdom of silence. The once restless ruler, who had sought refuge in the noisy distractions of the world, now understood that true peace could only be found within. But the lessons of silence were not meant to remain hidden in the solitude of the forest. They were meant to transform his daily life and, through him, the lives of others. The first test came as soon as he stepped back into his royal chambers. His advisors immediately approached him, eager to brief him on the pressing matters of the kingdom. But instead of responding impulsively, as he once would have, the king paused. He listened, not just to the words being spoken, but to the emotions behind them, the nuances he had often overlooked. This moment of stillness allowed him to respond thoughtfully, resolving disputes with clarity and compassion. The king's newfound approach puzzled those around him. "Why does the king speak so little now?" whispered the courtiers. But they soon realized that his words, though fewer, carried greater weight. When he spoke, it was with purpose and intention, and his decisions were met with respect rather than resistance. One day, a trusted advisor asked him, "Your Majesty, what has changed? You seem calmer, wiser, and more at peace than ever before." The king smiled and shared his realization. "I once believed that power came from controlling others and speaking with authority. But now I see that true strength lies in mastering oneself. Silence has taught me to listen, to others, to the world, and to my own heart. In listening, I have found the answers I once sought in vain." The advisor, moved by the king's transformation, asked, "How can we too embrace this wisdom?" The king thought for a moment and replied, "Begin with solitude. Spend time each day in silence. Reflect on your thoughts, your actions, and your purpose. You will find that silence is not an empty void, but a space where clarity and strength are born." As days turned into weeks, the king began to notice a profound shift in his relationships. His family, once distant and wary of his temper, now found solace in his calm presence. His children, who had once feared his stern words, began to confide in him, drawn to the warmth and understanding he now radiated. One evening, as he sat in the royal garden with his youngest son, the child asked, "Father, why do you spend so much time in silence?" The king gently placed a hand on his son's shoulder and said, "Silence is where I find myself. When I am silent, I can hear the whispers of my heart and see the beauty of the world more clearly. It is in silence that I learn how to love, to forgive, and to grow." His son nodded, though he did not fully understand. But in that moment, the king realized that the greatest gift he could give to his children was not wealth or power, but the wisdom of silence. The king began to implement the teachings of silence in his kingdom. He encouraged his court to embrace moments of stillness during meetings, allowing for deeper reflection and more meaningful discussions. He established quiet hours in the palace, during which everyone, from servants to ministers, was encouraged to meditate or spend time in peaceful contemplation. These changes brought remarkable results. The palace, once filled with noise and conflict, became a place of harmony and cooperation. Disputes that had once escalated into heated arguments were now resolved with understanding. The kingdom prospered, not just materially, but in spirit, as its people followed their ruler's example. The king's journey mirrors the one we all must take. In our fast-paced, noisy world, we often forget to pause and listen to ourselves and to the life around us. We chase distractions, hoping they will bring us happiness, only to find ourselves more restless than before. But silence offers a different path. In the stillness, we can confront our fears, embrace our truths, and rediscover our purpose. It is in silence that we learn who we truly are, free from the expectations and judgments of others. As the king discovered, silence is not about withdrawing from the world, but about reconnecting with it in a deeper, more meaningful way. As we draw from the king's story, let us take a moment to reflect on our own lives. When was the last time you sat in silence, free from distractions? When did you last listen, not just to others, but to your inner voice? Start with small steps. Spend a few minutes each day in quiet reflection. Let go of the need to fill the silence with words or noise. You may find, as the king did, that silence is not empty. It is full of wisdom, strength, and peace. So, my friends, embrace silence, and in doing so, embrace yourself. For within the stillness lies the key to understanding, to connection, and to a life of true fulfillment. Let the wisdom of silence guide you, just as it guided the king, toward a life of clarity, compassion, and joy. As the monk once told the king, silence is not an escape from the world, it is the doorway back to yourself, and when you find yourself, you find everything. The journey of the king teaches us a timeless lesson. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is a profound presence of understanding, clarity, and self-discovery. In the stillness, the king found the answers he had been searching for: peace, purpose, and connection with both himself and the world around him. Through his 15 days of quiet contemplation, the king realized that restlessness and conflict often stem from within. By embracing silence, he overcame his inner turmoil, learned to listen with intention, and spoke with purpose. His transformation serves as a reminder that true strength and wisdom arise not from control or noise, but from self-awareness and stillness. In a world filled with distractions and endless chatter, the king's story challenges us to pause and reflect. It invites us to reclaim the power of silence in our own lives, to find moments of solitude, to reconnect with our inner selves, and to approach the world with calm and clarity. Let us remember that silence is not a retreat from life, but a path to living it more fully. It is in silence that we can hear the whispers of our soul, see the beauty in simplicity, and find the strength to navigate even the noisiest of days. So, my friends, as you take this lesson into your life, may you too embrace silence, and in doing so, embrace the wisdom and peace that lie within. Let silence be your guide, and you will discover that the answers you seek have been within you all along. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to OM Wisdom for more journeys into timeless truths and inner peace.